Welcome, everybody, back into Nerd Sesh. As always, I'm Carson Breber, and alongside me is Logan Camden, decked out in the black and gold, having just watched another brutal blowout first-round playoff loss for his Steelers. I feel for you, my friend. We're just talking about that Steelers-Texans game tonight. If you're wondering, hold on a second, where's all the other game discourse? That means you missed out on our first two shows. We already did one Saturday night. We already did one Sunday night. So today, Logan, is a space for you to hash out all of your trauma, for you to just lay back on the couch and cry it all out. But before we get into that, I do want to give props to the team that is advancing, the team that is moving on in rather dominant fashion. This ends up being a 30-6 win for the Texans, Logan. And the headline here, of course, is that defense and the absolute hell they unleashed upon the Steelers offense. I've got a great stat that speaks to just how historically dominant this performance was. They are the first team on record to hold their opponents to 175 yards or fewer, just 2 third-down conversions or fewer, and have 2 defensive touchdowns in a playoff game. So that is the history that they made tonight. What does that say about the ceiling for this team and the formula and how far that defense can take them?
Yippee! I'm so glad they got to do that against my Steelers.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
the
the
second
most
defensive touchdown was really unsportsmanlike. But even if they hadn't done that, they would have been the first team since the 2000 Ravens in the Super Bowl against the Giants, actually.
A little bit of salt in the wound. Yeah. Honestly, the most impressive thing to me from this was that the Texans the Texans defense doubled up our own offense in points today. This is one of the most destructively dominant defensive wins I can remember in postseason history. Really, the Texans had 7 points going into the fourth quarter, and they racked up 23. I blinked.
14 of them literally from the defense.
Just in the snap of the hand. That's how great this defense is. I do think it said a lot about this Steelers offense and how bad this team is. We'll get to them in a little bit, but you can't do that unless you have a truly destructive defense. I mean, they have all pros everywhere. They have Pro Bowl talent at all 3 levels on this defense, and they're ascending. I mean, what's so interesting to me is Troy mentioned this at the end of the broadcast, but he was like, Jalen Petrie was one of the only guys here who was before D'Amico Ryans got here. And what that says to me is that, so much of this talent is new and in-house and young, and the Texans are just ascending. And as a Steelers fan, I am just so jealous to see this young, rising defense with all this talent everywhere. Will Anderson Jr., one of the best edges in football. Derek Stingley Jr., Kamari Lassiter, man. Even, the guys in the middle, Al-Shaair over from the Niners was just kind of a rotation guy for them, and he's a stud over here. They've got so much talent. They're all so young. They're all coming together at the right time. And I just think this is the best defense in football, man. I've been debating. I know you've been pounding the drum for them for a while, man. I was on Denver for a long time. I migrated from Denver to Seattle. And I don't know, maybe Seattle's bye week has got me. I know what they're capable of. I think they're all great, but I think Houston takes the cake, man. The other thing that they mentioned on the broadcast that is so damn amazing about this defense is the fact that they don't disguise looks, man. They just say, we are going to play you straight up, and you are simply not better than us. We are just better than you at every position group. We are going to dominate you at the line of scrimmage. Again, the defensive touchdowns are one thing that speaks to this team's excellence. The immense amount of pressure and how they are able to win on reps so quickly.
Yeah.
And how they just win on opposing teams' rushing attacks at the line of scrimmage every single down. This was such an ugly offensive performance from the Texans. Not really in terms of big plays like Woody Marks eventually gets over 100 yards. Christian Kirk has a career day. CJ Stroud hits on some explosive plays. Obviously, it was a much better day than what Pittsburgh had, than what a Los Angeles Chargers team had the other night, right? I'm not saying that it was a 0, but it was disappointing for most of this game. They had put up 7 points, right? They had hit on some big plays, but I was a little bit disappointed with what you got out of them. It's everything you should have expected out of this Houston team, and it's why Houston is capable of going to a Super Bowl. Look, I'm not going to pick it. I'm picking Houston to lose next round to New England. That's in my bracket, but Houston is capable of doing it because their defense can impose their will on anybody. And they've got a recipe, man. And the Texans are legit. And I am so jealous of you guys. It's a great win for the Texans defense today at all three levels, man. That is what getting dominated looks like.
It's such a great point about the age, the youth of some of the core pieces here, because I don't know if I can think off the top of my head in recent memory about a defensive big three like Will Anderson, Derek Stingley, and Kamari Lassiter, who are 24, 24, and 22 years old. And Anderson and Stingley were very highly drafted. They were super highly touted prospects, but my God, both of them have been everything that was advertised and even more. And then Petrie is a stud who even he is only 26 years old. Danielle Hunter is obviously the vet in this room, but is one of the better pass rushers in NFL history. Obviously, we're not talking about him as being a guy with like a top 10 edge rusher peak or anything like that, but just the consistency of the production. This guy has 115 career sacks now. He had 15 sacks this season, more than a decade into his NFL career. I do think he and Anderson together make a case for the best edge duo we've ever seen. I made this argument during the regular season, but Will Anderson this year, second in the NFL in pressures with 12 sacks. Hunter, eighth in the NFL in pressures with 15 sacks. We've obviously seen some great pairings over the years, but the collective dominance we're getting from those two right now is flat out all-time special. You saw it in this game where they both get into the backfield. They both have strip sacks. They just win at will. And that's what's so ridiculous about this defense. When you have an all-time great edge duo and you have the best cornerback duo in the NFL, and I say that knowing there's some damn good ones, I would not take anybody over Stingley and Lassiter. The ability to get quick pressure while rushing forward without having to do anything creative, any sort of tricky stunts. They never have to blitz. And on the back end, their coverage is more airtight than anybody else. When you can pressure and cover like that, it's the two most basic ingredients to being a dominant defense. And they have them both at an A++ level. And then the safeties are also really good. And the linebackers are good and can cover. And they stop the run. And also, this secondary is one of the best tackling secondaries I've ever seen. We can talk about the coverage. They also get downhill and they blow shit up in the run game and they blow up screens and they stick dudes immediately after the catch. That's why it felt like predetermined to me that the Steelers were going to have a horrible offensive game, because there is nothing that is not truly excellent about this Texans defense. You might think, oh, well, maybe Rodgers with his old man brain, he can get the ball out quickly and negate the pass rush a little bit. And it's just like, no, because you're never going to win against these corners. And if you do go to the checkdowns, they're going to be all over them sitting on those routes and blow that shit up too. So we saw all of that today. The Steelers didn't have a single third down conversion until the fourth quarter of this game, Logan. There was just no possible world in which the Steelers offense was ever going to put up points on this defense. It became abundantly clear, even as they were hanging around in this game. I said on Twitter when they went down 10-6, all right, the only path back for them is two safeties. But realistically, like, it was going to have to be a defensive touchdown. They got a takeaway in field goal range, and that's how they got their only points outside of the first drive of this game. It was a drive where they only actually went 4 yards forward on 7 plays, because their defense handed them the ball in a great position. So that does speak to just how limited this Steelers offense is, of course, but also what is so outstanding about the Texans defensive resume and why I do believe they are the best unit in football. And Seattle is exceptional too, especially the form that they've been in as of late. I think both these teams have surpassed Denver, who was maybe the front runner earlier in the year in this conversation. Houston has done it against one of the toughest schedules in the NFL overall this year. They shut down a lot of the best offenses in football. They carried this subpar, frankly, offense to 12 wins and ended the year second in points per drive allowed and dominant in literally every defensive category. They have a path to the Super Bowl because this defense is so completely destructive. Like, you can't discount. We saw them beat the Bills because they had one of the most dominant defensive performances I've ever seen with my own two eyes. The path is them doing this, a version of this, against a better offense, and CJ Stroud playing much better than he did today. And that is obviously the key component that did not go right at all for the Texans today. And they still beat the Steelers by 24, but you're playing the Patriots next. And then you're going to play the winner of Bills Broncos if you get through that game. And the bar is about to get so much higher. This was really an unacceptably sloppy game from CJ, who is asked to do a lot for this offense, considering the offensive line woes they have. But the Texans offense was at their best when they leaned on the run game in this one, which has not been the case for them. Like in the entire time CJ Stroud has been there, they've really struggled to run the ball, but Woody Marks was pretty dynamic. Their first touchdown drive, they really leaned on the run game. Their second touchdown drive, they leaned on the run game more. So that was something good for this offense to come out of this game. But I was disappointed in CJ. It doesn't come back to bite them. I just thought really bad awareness from him on those 2 strip sacks. We've seen a lot of this. If you look back to the Sunday night game, Chargers-Patriots, of guys just cocking the ball back and looking to make a play when they clearly can't. And obviously it's on the offensive line for allowing the pressure, but there comes a point where you just have to be willing to take the sack and not let it be a game-changing play. CJ Stroud made multiple mistakes that swung points on either side of the field because he fumbled deep in their own territory, and that allowed the Steelers to get a field goal. And then he threw a dumb interception on 3rd down that took points off the board for the Texans. And when this game was 7-6 into the 4th quarter, like, you talk about a slugfest where every point means so much, you just can't be making those sort of mistakes. Except today, of course, they could, because the defense was that absurd and the Steelers offense was that limited. But CJ was inaccurate too. He was just all out of sorts, as was the whole offense. He dropped 3 snaps. So along with the 2 strip sacks, he winds up with technically 5 fumbles in this game. Only the second player ever with 5 fumbles in a playoff game. And not all the drop snaps are on him. Like the 3rd one clearly was not. I think that was just you're playing a road game and something got messed up in terms of the cadence and the center snapped the ball when he wasn't ready. But it was just a very, very sloppy, ugly offensive performance by them. So CJ has a lot on his plate. He's got to be much better for this team going forward. And the Steelers defense did play well until their will was just absolutely broken, like on that final drive. But it was really CJ's mistakes that almost single-handedly kept Pittsburgh in this game for most of it. And that is important to remember. We look at this score and maybe this goes down in the history books if anybody ever thinks about this game again. And if they do, it'll probably just be as Aaron Rodgers' last game, as we'll get to. But maybe it looks like a blowout. It really wasn't. This game was uncomfortably close for Houston for much too long.
It was. And the Steelers' inability to capitalize on their mistakes is what made watching this game so incredibly frustrating. Like, I think on 2 of the turnovers, the Steelers had negative yards after them. That was the one play of the game to me. And shout out Omar Khan. I've been singing his praises. He is the one piece of the Steelers front office that I really like. That was that flea flicker from Houston. Wow, what a slow developing flea flicker. I cannot believe they called that. Two Steelers rookies making that play. All the old guard, right? I think that's what kind of is that's what I think of when I think of this modern Steelers defense is in old folks' home. Cam, TJ, Jalen Ramsey, all those guys. But the guys who made the play of the day to me were Jack Sawyer and Yahaya Black. And nobody, I'm pretty sure his name is Yahaya. Everybody says his name differently. They came up with the play of the day, and that is uncharacteristic of Stroud. He's going to have to do better. That's the one thing that I do trust the Steelers to do. The coverage always sucks against good teams, and when we need it to hold up on the back end, but they normally can get pressure and can be disruptive, and they do have a little bit of voodoo magic where they're able to force players. But honestly, Stroud just looked like uncharacteristically uncomfortable. I thought on that interception, he panicked. Like, dude, that rep, he had like 4 or 5 seconds to, like, he was bobbing and dancing, and it was almost like I've used this analogy before, but it was like a pressure cooker back there where you could feel his anxiety and stress moving through the pocket. It was like he knew, oh my gosh, I'm about to get hit. I have to, and he just like it was almost instinctive and reactive. It wasn't a calculated decision from CJ. So that was strange. I expect more and I expect better out of CJ. And I wish somebody had sat CJ down before this game and like told him, like, you don't need to play stressed out, CJ. This is
Mhm.
the Pittsburgh Steelers, man. Like, you have the best defense in football, and you're playing the oldest team in foot. They're either the oldest or the second oldest team in football. It's either them or Washington. Like, I don't know. I wish if
You
he
wish
had
somebody
played,
had said, "It's a playoff game, but it's not that serious. Just
it's
don't
like,
fuck
dude,
it up out there and we'll be good."
yeah, literally. Like, if he had played a little bit more within himself and relaxed and wasn't, because it's like you're saying, I completely agree with you, Carson. It's one of the most important parts of playing the quarterback position. It can sometimes get overlooked. You know me, man. I love a cavalier guy. I love a maverick. I love a guy that's willing to make a play, to get out of the pocket, to look
Mhm.
downfield. And I'll live and die with that guy. But one of the most important aspects of the quarterback position, and something that CJ Stroud's counterpart in this football game is the best at in NFL history, in my opinion, is avoiding negative plays,
Yeah.
not throwing the ball away, cutting your losses when you have to, when you're under pressure. And Rodgers did it today. People will shit on him for taking sacks and he's not mobile. That is mitigating risk. And that is one of the most important things that you can do as a quarterback. And that's sometimes saying, I got to eat this sack. I have no play to be made. We got to just go ball up top. We got to go put the ball back under center and re-snap the ball and line it back up. And we just got to eat this play. These are growing pains of a young quarterback. Look, man, I know what CJ Stroud is. I still think he's a top 10 quarterback. And he was without
Ooh.
Nico Collins for most of the night, which could get overlooked in, looking back at this
Yeah.
game.
Well,
This
not
is all.
most of the night. When was it? It was kind of mid-late third
Well,
quarter
he
that
went
he went
out
out with the
early
concussion.
he went out early in the first quarter, and then he exited the game again later, and he didn't come back. But I'm just saying
That's a big
that
deal
is a big deal.
going into next week because their upset formula becomes much less probable if they don't have by far their number one offensive weapon. Like Christian Kirk had a good game today, and Higgins, Noel, like these guys might be good for a deep ball game. I think Higgins is the guy you look at to step up, but Nico Collins carries such a heavy load in the offense for this passing game that if they don't have him out there, I think this offense looks ugly. And this offense, honestly, even with him out there, has looked ugly for a lot of this year and looked ugly for a lot of this game.
Yeah, it's only been glimpses. It's only been moments that you've seen the Texans put it together this year fully offensively, like drives,
Yeah, like
And
even their best wins, dude. Like when they went on that run where they knocked off 3 straight top 5 offenses at the time, Bills, Colts, Chiefs, it was really overwhelmingly about these dominant defensive
of
performances. They
course,
dropped 23, 20, and 20, and that's enough because the defense is that insane. But we have talked all year about the red zone concerns. This team's 30th in red zone percentage, settling for a lot of field goals, overall offensive line issues, and just really inconsistencies offensively top to bottom. I do usually look at CJ, even though the numbers haven't been sparkling, as the stabilizer here. And as a guy who, especially for a third-year quarterback, does have legitimate poise, like the defense gets the most of the credit for the Texans having the success they have had over these last 3 years, but CJ has been asked to hold together a lot for these offenses and has done quite a good job of it for being so young. So this game was uncharacteristic in that way. It's not like I expect this to be a recurring issue. It just can't be a recurring issue. And if it does happen again, the Texans will not win any football game against a better playoff team.
they won't. The Collins one is a big deal to me. I'm going to take the Patriots to win that game no matter what, but uh, I think that could make a difference for a lot of other analysts in terms of picking that game. And obviously, you're talking about the targets. Christian Kirk stepped up big time in this game. Again, you can do that against the Pittsburgh Steelers. I don't know if you're going to do that against Christian Gonzalez in New
Right.
England, right? That it exacerbates the issue. And I don't know, though, man. I think composure is going to be a big. I don't want to get too much into the preview real quick, but I did just think about this. Drake May looked real flustered last week against LA. CJ Stroud looked flustered today, man. I don't know. It could be what young quarterback can hold it together better. But that's a big thing about playing QB. I normally trust CJ to not make mistakes like that to be a better risk reward kind of balance manager. And I didn't think he did that well tonight, but I think this is one game against a good Steelers pass rush. And I do trust Stroud to to look a little bit better, but he looked uncomfortable tonight. He never looked at any point like, I want him to play more relaxed. I want him to play more free. And I don't know, like he genuinely looked stressed out there tonight, man. He never looked comfortable. And that's just uncharacteristic of Stroud. I do have more embedded faith. I was a little bit disappointed in him tonight.
It is going to be a really interesting test for both of these young, highly regarded quarterbacks. Obviously, I think May is just on a different level than Stroud, but May is going to be facing the most hellacious pass rush and the best defense in the NFL when his own offensive line is subpar. They've had issues protecting, including this past week in their own playoff game. That offense had a fair number of issues against a really good defense. And then you look at the flip side, and the Patriots don't have that conventional pass rush, but what they showed is an ability to come up with a lot of these pressure packages and bring these hellacious blitzes and create confusion on the back end and cover with their secondary, which is strong. And they're going to be facing a very flawed Houston offensive line. So we might see both young quarterbacks under some pressure, but Nico Collins is responsible for almost 30% of the Texans receiving production this year. Like, he is one of the most important receivers to a single passing offense in the NFL. It's going to be huge to see what his availability is. Obviously, it's a good win for the Texans. It always is when you get a win in the playoffs, especially by 24 points, even if it looked uglier than the scoreboard might say for a lot of it. But there's no surprises here, Logan, because we knew the Steelers offense was just completely outmatched here. We knew it was going to be a low-scoring game. I picked the Steelers to score 10. They end up scoring 6. So it's not like this was really different from what the expectation was. But as a Steelers fan, with now another non-competitive first-round playoff loss, as you look at a decade without a playoff win, what does this team have to do from here? Are you at your wits' end? Is it time for them to make the big changes that everybody's been talking about for several years now?
Yeah. It's been time. Here's the thing. Mike Tomlin's not going anywhere. And I'm going to reiterate that. I'm going to reemphasize that for Steeler fans in the back of the room, because I know there are probably a lot of you right now screaming that, clamoring, we want him gone. Mike Tomlin is not going anywhere. I have said this on the show before, and I will say it again. The Steelers do not fire head coaches. This is not something this organization does. Look at the entirety of the Super Bowl era. The Steelers were a joke before the Super Bowl era. The Super Bowl era comes along. They get Mean Joe Green. They get Terry Bradshaw. They get Chuck Noll. They dominate the 70s. They've been a storied franchise ever since. Noll, Cowher, Tomlin. It is remarkable consistency that just other franchises in the NFL don't have. And that's not lost on me. And it shouldn't be lost on you either. That is incredibly valuable to have as a franchise. It's like the Green Bay Packers being able to flex their muscle and going, we went Favre, Rodgers, Jordan Love. You don't get that kind of stability from bad franchises. And so I think Mike Tomlin is still a good coach. And Coach T isn't going anywhere. So you know what? I'm not going to make the argument that Coach T needs to get fired again, because I've done that before and I think it's tired. I think it's trivial. And I don't think we're going to be retreading old ground that we don't need to. That being said, I am going to reread some of the numbers that I read in the preview show to, again, emphasize why Steelers fans are at their wits' end, because for some reason, national media conveniently kind of overlooks the fact when they do go 9-8 or 10-7 or however long, and they lose in the first round, and they always go, oh, Coach T got into the playoffs again. Why are Steelers fans frustrated? I am just going to present this. Mike Tomlin was the 14th coach to appear in 20 playoff games against Houston. He was dead last in playoff win percentage coming into that game. He is still dead last now at 40%. He has won 8 of 20 career playoff games. Mike Tomlin, over his last 7 playoff games, has allowed an average of 37.1 points per game. Believe it or not, this Texans game actually helped him out in terms of that number.
Incredible.
Over those last 7 games, the Pittsburgh Steelers have lost those games by an average of 15 points per game. So not only are the Steelers losing these games, they are getting blown out in every single one of them on average. So I just want to present that case so everybody understands where Steeler fans are at with our frustration. But I've already laid out that Mike Tomlin isn't getting fired. So I'm going to lay out my plan if I was running the Steelers, because we are chasing our tail right now.
Yeah.
The Steelers, we need to set a few things in concrete. The Steelers are not going to go into a deep rebuild because they never do that, and they never have. So that's off the table. But we are one of the oldest franchises in the NFL, or the oldest rosters in the NFL, and we're not getting younger. That is basically across the board at almost every single position, save offensive line. The first thing that needs to happen is Arthur Smith and Terrell Austin both need to get fired. Because if the Steelers are going to hold on to Mike Tomlin, you have to accept something with Mike Tomlin as an unalienable truth about him as a coach. He cannot coach offense. And he does not know what he is doing at all on offense. Mm-hmm. And I think Ben Roethlisberger was the biggest Band-Aid of Mike Tomlin's career on offense.
And
Ben
also AB and Le'Veon Bell.
Brown and Le'Veon Bell, David DeCastro, Ramon Foster. Awesome drafting from Kevin Colbert to set all of that up in motion. 2004, when the Steelers drafted Big Ben, right? You got a Hall of Fame quarterback. That's just great. That makes that job cushy from day one. You walk into a Hall of Fame defense. I'm not even here to be critical about Mike Tomlin as a defensive coach, because I think you can't tell me that he's not a good defensive coach, because Mike Tomlin has won so consistently in the regular season. It just proves it. But this isn't about winning regular season games anymore. This is obviously about winning playoff games. And so we have to change variables. We cannot run back the exact same variables next season, and specifically with Austin and with Arthur Smith. Arthur Smith has proven to me that he can't game plan against the number one defense. All right, I am going to draw conclusions from this game. With limited personnel, Arthur Smith cannot elevate guys to compete against the number one defense. That's just true with what he put on the field today. So he needs to go. I saw a guy, and don't get me wrong, the San Francisco 49ers have much more talent than the Pittsburgh Steelers do, even on their worst day. As many of those guys are in the hospital, they are way more talented. Kyle Shanahan has proven time and time again, no matter what you want to say about him, he can game plan against the best of the best and elevate his talent. Coach T can't do that offensively, and Arthur Smith can't. The only time Arthur Smith had success, and Arthur Smith's a step up. I have sang his praises this year because Arthur Smith is the best offensive coordinator we've had since Todd Haley. That's not lost on me either. Todd Haley sucked, guys. He was not good. Like, Arthur Smith is a good offensive coordinator, but we need someone better. The only time Arthur Smith had elite success at the NFL level as an offensive coordinator or a head coach was when he had Derrick Henry, one of the greatest running backs of all time, at his disposal. So what conclusions can we draw about Arthur Smith? He's not a guy who's going to go above and beyond. And so all I'm saying is, if you want Steelers fans to keep their wits about them, you guys are going to have to, and I'm saying this to the Steelers front office when I say you guys, you're going to have to make some tough decisions. And if you're not going to bite the bullet and fire Coach T, which I just don't expect to happen, I have removed that thought entirely from my mind. And I'm okay with that. Coach T is a good regular season head coach. And I think he is migrating to becoming a more modern game manager. He's still frustrating sometimes, I won't lie, but he is being a little bit more aggressive in situations. And so his game management, his regular season game management, I am for. Mike Tomlin's voodoo magic, what he can do to his divisional opponents, I think that is valuable enough to warrant keeping him. But if you are going to keep Coach T, and we're going to make that concession, then you need to make some other major changes. And I am looking at coordinator hires. And I'm not only looking at coordinator hires because those guys aren't good, but because there are good offensive coordinators, I think, available and on the table. And I don't know who's the guy firing the gun, Carson, if it's Tomlin or Omar Khan, but we can't spare bullets, man. Like, we gotta be ready to empty the clip this offseason, to make some tough decisions, to get some guys out of the house and move on. And I think that's the right decision. I think it's going to give the Steelers more opportunity to win playoff games, which is the standard. And that's where I'm at, man. And for Terrell Austin, same thing. I have just seen it time and time again where I just don't think Terrell Austin is an elevator. Again, I'll give them credit for being good regular season coaches. I'm beyond that right now, guys. We need playoff wins. And We need them now. So where are you at, Carson? Do you think I'm crazy? Do you think Coach T actually could get fired? And if you were the Steelers organization, what are you doing this offseason?
I don't see Tomlin getting fired because I think you're right about the Steelers' philosophy as a franchise. I think if he eventually does move on, it's going to have to be some sort of mutual agreement, and whether or not he's pushed in that direction behind closed doors or if it is him genuinely coming to that conclusion. Like, I don't think they are ever going to come out and fire him and sort of just smear him with that. But the reality is the Steelers have been suffering from the curse of competence for a long time now. They are suffering from having a defensive minded, culture building head coach who is able to make the most out of the defensive talent they have. And they've had a lot of good defensive talent, obviously. And you often win in special teams and you have the quote unquote voodoo magic, which means you can win a lot of games that you shouldn't necessarily win, and you can make the playoffs with a negative point differential and do all these things to really max out what these teams should be capable of on paper. And then you get to the playoffs and the conclusion is inevitable. They have not had a chance at a playoff game since 2020 against the Browns. And I say they had a chance going in. They got manhandled even in that game. I mean, that went to garbage time really quickly. Everything since then, when they go up against the Chiefs or the Bills or the Ravens as they have, for a matter of fact, they are not going to be able to keep up with those sort of quarterbacks and those sort of offenses. And so they lost all those games in blowouts. Today, I thought was the best chance they've had since 2020, and I still picked it to be a double-digit loss, and it ended up being a 24-point loss. So I call it the curse of competence because this is kind of a liminal hellscape for Steelers fans. You feel like you're trapped in this most claustrophobic of spaces where the range of outcomes is so damn limited. And yeah, it's nice
when
to
you
win
just
9
accept
games, 10
it, man.
games. You
just don't let your heart in it, and you don't get any hopes up, man.
I know, but Logan, there is another way. And the way is you actually bottom out, because you can turn things around so fast in the NFL if you make the right moves. Look at New England. Look at Jacksonville. Look at the Bears. Those are 3 teams that were able to get very high draft picks. All of them drafted the guy who they believe to be their franchise quarterback, all those guys being like pretty immense talents in their own ways. For a Jacksonville, for a Chicago, they were able to draft towards the top of the order multiple times over and replenish some of that talent. And sometimes it takes a Matt Eberflus, who is a total idiot, or a Mayo, who is an idiot, or a Doug Peterson, who is an idiot, for you to go out there and find your Liam Cohen, find your Ben Johnson, find your Mike Vrabel out of absolute necessity. Like, those teams in one season, coming from being 3 of the worst teams in the NFL last year, have all immediately reached significantly higher heights than anything the Steelers have done in this decade. So they can keep stacking up 9, 10-win seasons, and it's cool that Tomlin hasn't had a losing campaign in 19 years, and that speaks to something that is good about him. But this is ultimately just such a mediocre spot for this franchise to be, and there is no hope, and there's nothing but, as you're saying, this sort of detached nihilism of, yeah, we know what's going to happen. That's no way to live as a football fan, man. Like, you know it as well as anybody. Some people can talk themselves into it, but every single year, you know where this ship is going.
My heart hasn't beat during a playoff game in 8 years, man. Like the most I have gotten from the Steelers was last week when we beat Baltimore. Before that, when Kenny Pickett did that same shit to Baltimore with the season on the line to Najee. Like, I get those moments, and they are few and far between, and it's more frustrating for Steelers fans. And I'm not saying this is a dig at other fans, but because we have felt it. I know what it's like. I'm saying this from a very spoiled perspective. I've lucked into the football lottery when I chose the Steelers to be my favorite team as a kid, right?
Mm-hmm.
I haven't felt it. And I think it's a logical fallacy. The franchise QB thing, I'm not saying it's a bad idea. Carson, I completely agree with you. If I was running the Steelers organization, I'd cut Tomlin a check. I'd say, Tomlin, we're going to induct you into the Hall of Fame. We're going to part ways this offseason. Like, you are a legend of football. You're going into the Hall of Fame. You are a Steeler great. Probably hire Brian Flores as my new head coach. We say, hey, Brian, no pressure to win this year. It's you got the most expensive defense and old roster. Our starting quarterback just left. We are going to take this year as a gap year. We're going to give you some cushion and let you breathe and let you, take the reins. And it is time. It is just so obviously time to restart for Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
Carson, it's their pride.
I know.
Pittsburgh can't let it is a pride and ego thing in Pittsburgh that they can't let themselves suck.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, guys.
I get it.
Hey, and I just want to say this. Guys, listen to the fans.
Yeah.
I mean, you act so surprised when they are booing the offense at the end of this game. You act so surprised when the skid in the middle of this year, everybody's chanting, fire Mike Tomlin, when the fucking Bills are spamming cutback runs all game. Like, the Steelers fans are just fed up to the brim. They are tired of your ego and your pride and you guys not recognizing that it is time to just blow it up and accept that fact. And you're going to create more fans like me who are just numb to this, who don't. I love the Steelers. I live and die with you guys. I didn't care today because I knew exactly what was going to happen, because I've seen this exact same football game every single year for the last 5 to 6 years. I am just numb and tired, and I'm right. And I am so tired of being correct about you guys. I say it in the preview before the year starts every year when every jackass comes on the previews and they go, the Steelers are going to suck this year because their roster isn't that good. And I say, no, we're probably going to make the playoffs and lose in the first round like we do every year, because it's so obvious, and I'm so tired of doing the same shit. And you're right, Carson. If the Steelers could just let go of their fucking ego and pride and bottom out and restart, they could finally get to somewhere new. And stop hitting their fucking head on this wild card ceiling, bruh.
And I want to be
clear.
I feel like?
I'm going to say this. You know what I feel like right now?
Tell me.
The Dallas Cowboys. I feel like the Dallas fucking Cowboys, man. A Cowboys fan could talk shit to me right now, and you know what I'd say? You're right, bro. You're exactly right.
The thing is, the Cowboys have actually reached higher heights than the Steelers in the 2020s. Not in terms of playoff success. They've had more talented teams, though. And so they've actually been disappointing. With the Steelers, it's not even disappointing. It's just the inevitable. You just shrug your shoulders at the end and you say, yeah, we all knew how that was going to go. How was that for you? Not great. How was that for me? Not great. Something that Logan, you and I are very familiar with. But I will say, when I talk about the path of bottoming out and coming back, obviously, that is not to say that it is a given. I mean, it's much easier said than done to execute that sort of quick turnaround, because for every Patriots, Jags, Bears, there's a Browns, there's a Jets. These are these franchises that have been wallowing in misery. But I do think those are truly incompetent franchises. And I'm not going to say, obviously, that there are a bunch of Caleb Williams and Drake Mays running around waiting to be drafted. You can get the number one pick and not have a shot at a guy in that talent range. If you get the number one pick this year, you are not going to have a shot at a quarterback who is that kind of talent, right? But although I'm not going to say either that there are a bunch of Liam Cohens and Ben Johnsons running around, there are definitely more of those guys. There are Kubiaks running around. There are LaFleurs running around. There's a Mike McDaniel out there for hire this year. Like, there are a lot of great young offensive minds who are meaningful game changers. And Mike Tomlin will never even hire one as his OC, dude. Like, he has such a dinosaur football mindset.
Do you know why?
Why? Because he's old?
No, spell it out, Carson. Come on, man. You're smart, bro. You know exactly why Mike Tomlin
because he doesn't want to take his job?
Exactly. Because what would happen is Mike McDaniel would walk in there, and you know what? I think if Mike had some 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 vision into the future, he would realize that that's actually the key to maxing out the defense. Because Mike McDaniel is going to put you onto all the fat new shit that all the other offenses are running, and then Tomlin can go, wow, you're going to give me the answers to counter it. It's because they threaten Coach T's job as the top dog. And that's it, Carson. You're hitting the nail on the head, because it's a logical fallacy to me that the Steelers have to bottom out and have to get that franchise-changing quarterback to get back to the top. Don't get me wrong. You need that guy to go out there and win a Super Bowl. You don't need that guy to go out there and win a playoff game. You know what I mean? It's like the San Francisco 49ers in the exact same year that the Pittsburgh Steelers took a quarterback in the first round. Kenny Pickett, the only first-round quarterback drafted that year, they drafted a guy with the last pick in the draft named Brock Purdy, and that guy has been to an NFC title game and just won a playoff game this year. So I just – and I get it. And exactly, and I get it, man, right? Like, Shanahan's a different beast, but that's the point. When you have superior coaching that can take that guy, you can overcome. Like, I want that guy, man. I want that guy.
Yeah, and it's like, why are you looking at Matt Canada? Like, Arthur Smith, it just feels like there are these guys who are like in their 40s and 50s and deeply uncreative when you look at the standard of play callers that are like gushing out of the McVay and Shanahan trees. And it's not to say that every guy who coaches under McVay or Shanahan or LaFleur like is immediately going to pick up everything that they have to offer, but like there's kind of a lot of them, dude. Like, it's a legitimate trend. You should hire people. You should contribute to that brain drain when you can. And instead, it looks like Tomlin is searching for the oldest, grumpiest, baldest guy with the biggest mustache he can find, who's going to want to run inside zone the most. I don't know. It's just very frustrating, very stagnant. Yeah.
We didn't touch on that. That's a great point, Carson, because I'll tell you what, man, another thing that really makes me mad. Look, the Steelers were never going to win this football game. We didn't have the dogs in the fight. I realize that.
Yeah.
Arthur Smith running, it reminded me of Joe Brady the other day, except we ain't got a Josh Allen. Like, running so often on first down, dude. Can you dig your head out of your ass and realize that you are just digging us a hole on every drive, bruh? Just start with a screen. Start with a short pass. Like, I watch so much football that it just makes me so jealous watching these other guys with creative offenses. And then I got to watch fucking Arthur Smith running the blandest shit that wouldn't have fooled nobody in 2012. This year, man, bro, how the fuck was Bruce Arians' playbook in 2005 deeper than what Arthur Smith and these guys have got going on in 2025, man? I don't get it.
Yeah, I will say, and you mentioned this, it wasn't going to be the difference today, and I think whatever they tried to go with, they were going to be fucked, right? They didn't have success on the ground. They averaged 3.5 yards per rush. They averaged 3.3 yards per pass, though, when you account for the sack yardage lost, and it did feel like, okay, if you have an incomplete pass on first down, you might as well pack it up. Like, if the Texans know you're throwing on 2nd and long and 3rd and long, and they can fully pin their ears back, like, that pass rush is just so dominant, and Rodgers was just so incapable of evading it, of doing anything out of structure. Of course, he crumbles under pressure because he's 42 years old facing a god-tier pass rush. And the only downfield weapon on this team is DK Metcalf, who even he dropped what would have been one of the big completions of the early part of this game when this team just needed any sort of momentum offensively. And we've talked about the running backs obviously being release valves, but again, like, you just weren't going to get those kind of yards off of checkdowns. You weren't going to get that kind of production after the catch with a lot of these screens and short passes because the Texans are just too great as a tackling team, and they knew that's really all the Steelers had in their bag. So it's not that this game is on Arthur Smith or any one individual. It's really just a testament to more than a half decade of offensive incompetence from the Steelers, which has made them deeply unserious and entirely uncompetitive when it comes to big games against actually really good teams in the playoffs.
And I completely agree. And one of the things I am becoming over the past couple of years, my football philosophy has really changed as the game has changed.
You've had an awakening.
Not only has it been more of a switch from like defensive to offensive, if your offense is incapable of even getting first downs and moving the ball, like Denver, for example, I really like Denver's talent top to bottom. There is such an you can quantify this in like time of possession or first downs or stuff like this of I've got the ball in my hands and you don't. And that gives me, it builds in some margin for me where I can go on these long, sprawling drives and all the ripple effects that has where your defense can rest and not be on the field. But also just the sheer fact that your opponent doesn't have the ball. And so they can't score on you unless they get a turnover, right? I am just slowly souring more and more on teams that have shown that they can't sustain drives, man. But especially teams like Pittsburgh. Like, I'm not even saying this just directly about Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh is on a different level of offensive ineptitude when it comes to big games. Since Big Ben left, they have been out in the middle of the ocean without a life raft, like just drowning. If it's Kenny Pickett, if it's Mitch Trubisky, if it's fucking Mason Rudolph, if it's Russell Will, whoever it is, they all suck. But that is something about the Steelers that just puts so much extra pressure on this old-ass Steelers defense. And I thought you saw them. And again, I'm saying this more as a philosophical point on football about the type of offense I think you need to have to win a Super Bowl in the NFL in 2025. But it is a caricature of the Steelers when the defense is out on the field all game long and they are so tired and they are so responsible for getting stops and winning the game. It is my point here is just that I think I am souring more and more on teams with that kind of formula, and I just can't bet on you to make runs.
No, you have to, dude. I mean, look at the worst offenses in the playoff field. The Eagles, they may have all the defensive talent in the world. They couldn't get out of the first round against a team that has an IR list longer than anybody in the NFL because they had great coaching and they were able to make the most of their offensive talent on the field and still come up with more creative stuff and generate more big plays than a totally inept Philly offense. Look at the Chargers, whose offense around Herbert is so disastrous. And by the way, we talked about this a lot yesterday, but I do think as much as it was an untenable, horrible situation for him in terms of the surroundings and the pressure he was constantly under and the incompetence of their offensive line and everything we talked about, I do want to be clear that Herbert was bad yesterday. He didn't make any key plays. They went 1 of 10 on third down. They didn't execute whatsoever in the red zone, had 2 trips inside the 5 where they got 3 points. The few opportunities that he did have to convert on some big shot plays, he missed. So I feel like even though I did say flat out, Herbert was not good, it's just big picture. He is the one that is lifting this team up and carrying so much as everything around him is such a shit show. I think I was maybe not critical enough of that specific performance yesterday because I was just making sure in my head, okay, I don't want to lose the big picture because I do think Herbert is so good and he doesn't get enough credit. But yesterday he was legitimately bad on top of this just ridiculously horrible surrounding circumstance. But all that to say, the Steelers take the cake for worst offensive performance of the weekend. Like, all of those 3 teams had the ugliest losses. They were the least competitive games, and Philly was obviously still competitive, but it just stands in such stark contrast, even, Logan, to like the Carolina Panthers, where you look at them and you're like, hey, they've got a great play caller, and they've actually got legitimate dudes in the trenches offensively, and they've got perimeter talent like Ted McMillan and Jalen Coker are actual big, athletic, talented receivers who can win. And so they can put their quarterback and their offense in positions to succeed. Like, obviously, they didn't face the Texans defense.
Aaron Rodgers to Adam Thielen in the flat.
Yeah. Yeah. And by the way, maybe the play call of the day for them was going to Thielen in the flat. That was a nice 4th down pickup, which, of course, ended up not mattering at all because they went backwards because Aaron Rodgers got sacked and they ended up settling for 3 anyways. A slightly longer field goal, in fact, than it would have been if they had just kicked it initially. So, honestly, my take is if Rodgers wants to come back, welcome him back because he is the best quarterback you've had in years. And even though he is still, at best, I would say the 20th best starter just because he's so physically limited, they don't have a better option.
And their timeline is still win as much as you can.
Which is the crazy thing.
Old-ass roster.
And an expensive roster and an expensive defense specifically. But if Rodgers is done, which it seems like he is probably more likely than not, I think regardless of your financial investments, regardless of your philosophy as a franchise and wanting to be competitive and wanting to win now, like you have to call it because you cannot run back this scramble for who is the below average veteran quarterback who we can go pick up. Like, I'm sorry, man.
What are you
You
saying?
can't do another version of the Trubisky, Kenny Pickett, Russell Wilson show.
I think if Rodgers retires, the Steelers are just going to start Will Howard next season. Or actually, let me retake that. The more likely outcome is they announce Mason Rudolph will be the starter, Will Howard will be the backup, and then it's just we're waiting. No, I'm telling you.
Can we relegate them? Can we relegate them at that point? Can we send them to the XFL?
They're just not going to outright start Will Howard. The only reason they're going to do that is because it's going to be like, oh, he's the veteran. He knows the system, so we have to start Mason.
Mason fucking Rudolph for a supposed win now team as your week one starter? And by the way, Will Howard, we're talking about a 6th round rookie. Why are these the two options? Like, it's just absurd, dude. I'm sorry. There's going to come a point where they have to hit the reset. And every year they wait, TJ Watt's trade value goes down. And as they've waited, he's like the only valuable asset really in terms of a defensive trade. Well, I think they could obviously get off of Joey Porter and maybe they just trade some of these younger edges.
Why would we trade Joey?
No, you're right.
Joey's
you wouldn't trade him because he's only 25.
Joey's one of the best corners in the league. I think if you're going to trade
I'm just trying to think about assets defensively this team has because they need to
TJ,
so
I would
you're
trade.
Right. They shouldn't trade.
If you were going to restart, I would trade TJ. I would trade Highsmith. I would at least trade Highsmith for sure because I think
you're not going to be able to trade Cam. I don't think as good as he is. He's
also Cam's a lifer. Nobody's going to want Cam.
And honestly, 31 even.
Yeah,
and that's clearly just had his worst season.
That's where if you're going to clear up salary cap to pay for the offense, that is where I would trade a Highsmith. Honestly, I don't think you can trade a Patrick Queen. I think he's still a little bit too valuable to this team. We're doing all this talk, man. My question is going to be, what have the Steelers shown us over the past 4 years, 5 years that would indicate that any of this is even remotely feasible? I think the most likely outcome, Rodgers comes back. Rodgers has an insatiable itch to come back and play football, and he doesn't want to leave, and this be his last game ever, him getting embarrassed at the hands of the Houston Texans.
Mm-hmm.
The Steelers are like, wow, this is an encouraging offensive year, the best one we've had in years. Let's bring Arthur Smith back. Sick. Terrell Austin is butt buddies with Mike Tomlin, so they'll bring him back. So nothing will change. Everybody will be back 10-7, first round exit. That is my official prediction for the 2026 Pittsburgh Steelers, baby.
You think Rodgers is going to come back? You think that's more likely than not?
I think Rodgers has that Brett Favre kind of Tom Brady, I can't let it go. I think they have got this quarterback compulsion that I can't quite quantify. And like Peyton Manning, John Elway won it, and they got to say, I'm out of here. And I think that's how all of them wanted to do it. Tom Brady was such a football sicko that even when he did win it, he still said, oh, I got to come back. I need more. I got to get another filthy title. And then I think Rivers is one of those sick competitors. I think he's going to go into his darkness retreat this year, and then I think he's going to emerge like the groundhog, and he's going to go, I'm back, baby. And
you never know.
I just think I think he's got that personality, man. Him, Favre, Brady. I just think he's going to come back, and I don't think he wants to go out on a game like this.
Yeah, and literally his last throw being a pick six. You know who else's last throw was a pick six when they were 42 years old? Tom Brady. And he made some pretty big changes and made some pretty big stuff happen after that. Obviously, Rodgers has already regressed a lot more than Brady had at 42. Brady was one of a kind. But I do want to give Rodgers props because this is still the second best season ever by a 42-year-old quarterback, because it's really the only other legitimate starting season ever from a guy of this age. He's the only second 3,000-yard passer at 42 years old that we've ever seen, obviously Brady being the other. But I really don't know. I cannot get any sort of read on Aaron Rodgers. It does seem like the indications have been that he's leaning towards retirement. If he doesn't retire, I think he's coming back to Pittsburgh. I can't really imagine him wanting to shake things up again. Like, there were rumors about other teams being interested this offseason. Minnesota obviously was seen as like an intriguing destination, but they've got 9, who's the best quarterback anybody's ever seen. And I don't think you're going to find another team that like has the offensive or just the overall football talent in place to where they think they're a playoff caliber team and they want Aaron Rodgers. And like, I was impressed with what Rodgers did, but he is the most Steelers option at this point because they're like, we'll take what we can get. Oh, he's old. Oh, he's really fucking old. Great. That's amazing. That's the best case scenario. And he's like good enough for us to win 10 games, but then he's going to get eaten alive by an elite defense. Oh my God. Sign me up.
He was great in 2016. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Let's get him here.
Yeah. If this is it for Rodgers, Logan, how do you reflect on his career, really?
If this is the end for Aaron Rodgers, I'll sing his praises. I mean, I think Rodgers is one of the 3 to 5 most talented quarterbacks of all time. I think he is and people won't like this take. I mean, for me, he is a top 3 quarterback of all time. That's not just because he played for the Pittsburgh Steelers for one day. If you were asking me to start my team, what quarterback I would want under center at their apex, go ahead. People can throw stones at me for this. I'm going to take Patrick Mahomes, number 1.
Sid Luckman, 2.
I'm going to take Aaron Rodgers, I think, number 2. And I think I'm probably going to take Josh Allen, number 3. And then I might take Tom Brady, number 4. And I know that sounds ludicrous because Tom Brady won a bajillion Super Bowls. But I think there's a different kind. It goes back to the talent argument. And I'll get into that argument here in a second.
So you're talking about peak here purely, right? You're saying one season at their absolute best.
Peak for peak. Like, even you could go 2 to 3 seasons at their absolute apex. Those are my guys. I don't know if anybody else ever played the quarterback position better. He's so efficient, so great at avoiding sacks, at avoiding negative plays, at throwing balls away when he needed to, at not throwing interceptions, not turning the ball over at all. Like, all of that. His physical ability, though, like the arm talent and the scrambler that he was, I think he's I think he's one of the greatest arm talents of all time. You can't talk 100%. About his arm talent enough. Like, it is unreal.
I don't know if there's a better combination of arm strength and the ability to do it on the move, off platform from a bunch of different angles, and to have the pinpoint all-time, arguably GOAT accuracy that he did. I think Mahomes is the closest thing, but like, he could truly make every single throw in the book in a way that it's like Josh Allen can too. Those are the 3 guys who have the raw arm talent, but I do think that Rodgers was just flat out more accurate than Josh. His accuracy was perfect.
And here's a logical fallacy that I want to get to that is probably the biggest talking point about Aaron Rodgers' career. One, I'll say this flatly. I don't think that Aaron Rodgers' playoff shortcomings are on him. I think Aaron Rodgers is one of the better playoff performing quarterbacks of all time. And yes, I did leave out Peyton Manning underneath him. I wouldn't take Peyton over Rodgers. I think there's a talent difference there. I think Rodgers just performed better in the playoffs. But one of the worst arguments to me is the Super Bowl thing. I'll say it again for people who are new here at Nerd Sesh. Carson and I say this almost every time I feel like we talk about quarterbacks. Wins are not a QB stat, and you don't win a Super Bowl by yourself. It's a 53-man roster.
Things.
Tom Brady won, all those Super Bowls. He had a top defense basically every single year. Like, you don't win football games by yourself. You're ignoring context. And the fact that Aaron Rodgers' offense is outproduced almost every quarterback in NFL history on a per-game basis, if we are talking about points per game. And the biggest thing to me about that, too, is without really elite talent. Because I think you think about some of the greatest playoff offenses of all time. You think about the greatest show on turf Rams with like Kurt Warner, Isaac Bruce. You think about Brady, and even though they didn't win Super Bowls with these teams, but with Welker and Randy, and he did win some with Gronk, right? You think about Peyton and those Broncos and Mahomes' Chiefs and this and that.
Oh, and
Rodgers
Peyton's
was,
Colts were
yeah,
totally stacked too.
Montana's Niners, right? Like Steve
Mhm.
Young's Niners, right? Like whoever you want to point at. Kurt Warner's Cardinals too. All those teams had so much more talent. And I get Rodgers has Devontae Adams there at the tail end of his career, but for so much of his career, he is elevating all the talent around him. He is doing this with, not really like all pros or a bunch of Pro Bowl talent around him. He had good players, right? Everybody does, but
Yeah.
not like guys that were really elevating him to a different level. And I think that I was like, and if you were one of those people going, Tom Brady has 7 Super Bowls, guys, I'm not arguing accolades right now, okay? If you want to argue accolades, that's like legacy talk. That is a different argument to me. I'm talking about your pure ability at the quarterback position, and I don't really think his losses reflect on him. I went back and we did this in a podcast, I want to say probably 3-4 years ago now, but we talked about, I broke down why I think Rodgers is misunderstood. I think his playoff shortcomings aren't his fault. He always produced in the playoffs, and his defenses were routinely allowing 30 points per game. Like, to Rodgers detractors, my question is always, what else did you want him to do? Did you want him to go out there and suit up and play cornerback? Did you want him to replace Kevin King against the Buccaneers in that NFC title game? Like, I hate how toxic and disingenuous arguments are made about Aaron Rodgers, and it's because of his lack of Super Bowls or because people don't like his personality. And I'm just not going to do it. I think Rodgers is one of the 3 greatest quarterbacks I have ever had the privilege of watching. He's one of the most talented quarterbacks I've ever watched. And if this is the end for him, I am going to miss him immensely. I hated Aaron Rodgers for a long time because he crushed my soul as a child in the Super Bowl. And then I grew to love him because he's one of the best quarterbacks I've ever watched play the position. And he really has aged like a fine wine, man. And like you said, coming into this, man, I think this Steelers year, all in all, even though it ends on a sour note, is a success for him in the legacy and career of Aaron Rodgers.
He's a top 5 quarterback of all time. I'm totally with you there. And my top 5 is Brady, Mahomes, and then Peyton, Montana, Rodgers. That's not exactly in order. I'd have to think about that, but he's in that top 5 for sure. And I completely agree with you on where people unfairly try to detract from his legacy. Like you mentioned the numbers about what he and his offenses have done in the playoffs across all his Packers years, his playoff career. The guy averaged 268 passing yards per game, had a 100 passer rating, 45 touchdowns against 13 picks, and his offenses averaged 27.3 points per game, which I believe you just mentioned the other week. The only all-time great quarterbacks whose playoff offenses have averaged more are Mahomes' Chiefs, Warner's Rams and Cardinals, and Josh Allen's Bills. So you're talking about all-time great individual production and efficiency and all-time offensive production, even up against these other greats. And it does speak to how bad luck, how context, how losing in championship games and defensive failures and all these things can just unfairly affect the legacy of a guy who, I think clearly, if you look at the talent, if you look at the production, if you look at the resume and the numbers, all these things, if you watch the games, like, forget saying, okay, he's got 1 Super Bowl. Have there ever been 5 players who played the quarterback position better than Aaron Rodgers? Because that's all that he can actually do out there, man, is play the quarterback position, and he's one of the 5 best to ever do it. He, in his Packers career, threw for 475 touchdowns to 105 interceptions. He was a 4-time passer rating leader. He was a 4-time MVP. He had several of the greatest quarterback seasons we've ever seen. 2011 and 2014, dude, you could argue those are both top 5 regular seasons by a quarterback in NFL history. Maybe that's pushing a little bit because you got 04 and 2013 Peyton, and you got 07 Brady, and you got 2018 and 22 Mahomes. There's obviously some amazing seasons, but those 2 seasons go toe-to-toe with any of them. Like, they would both be in my top 10 individual quarterback seasons ever. And just the totality of that range, I mean, the early and mid-2010s, we've never seen anything quite like Aaron Rodgers in terms of the blend of the insane physical tools, the arm talent with the mobility that obviously is not like what we're seeing from a Josh Allen today, and probably wasn't even what you see from a Mahomes, but it wasn't far off of that. I mean, he was a legitimate special playmaker out of structure. And then to pair that with one of the brightest brains, one of the best processors and decision makers and accurate throwers we've ever seen at the quarterback position. He just led elite offenses year over year, dude. In his entire Packers tenure, 15 years, they averaged 27 points per game with him in the regular season. That was third in the NFL over that span. They went 147, 75, and 1 with him. I mean, consistent elite regular season results on the back of elite offense. They went 6, 12, and 1 without him. This guy was elevating his teams just about as much as anybody we've ever seen. And I don't want to make it out to be that Aaron Rodgers didn't play with really good players, because of course he did. And even if he doesn't have like that tier 1 all-time weapon that stands out like a Gronk or like a Tyreek Hill, he had really good overall receiving cores in the early 2010s with the totality of Jordy Nelson and Greg Jennings and Donald Driver and James Jones. I mean, there was good depth in those groups. In the later years of his prime, like when he's winning MVP in 2020 and 2021, he had more help in the run game and from play calling, and he did have Devontae Adams. So like you said, nobody does it alone, but the consistency of what he did is top tier all time. And I do think you look at some of those early 2010 seasons, and I think the 2011 season specifically, I'll single that one out. The fact that that was an all-time great, and I mean a top 5 regular season offense in league history. They averaged 35 points per game with a rushing attack that was 26th in total production, 27th in yards per attempt. Their leading rusher was James Starks, who didn't even crack 600 yards that year. Aaron Rodgers alone, man, like the passing attack alone carried them to those sort of heights, because the guy threw for over 4,600 yards, 45 touchdowns against 6 picks with 9.2 yards per attempt and a passer rating of 122.5, which I believe was the best in NFL history until Lamar Jackson pushed it last year, but actually Lamar didn't even break it. So I think that is the best passer rating in NFL history. Like, I just can't say enough great things about Aaron Rodgers, especially because of how people talk about him and how people try to smear his legacy because of the lack of Super Bowls, where it's like, bro, if you're bringing up Super Bowls as a point for Peyton Manning, the argument for Peyton Manning is that he is even greater than Rodgers in the regular season. That if those guys are 2 of the 3 best regular season quarterbacks ever, when you look at the totality of their resumes, Peyton Manning, 7-time first-team All-Pro, relative to era, is the greatest. But I'm sorry, dude, I don't care that Peyton Manning, as a walking skeleton who threw for 9 touchdowns to 17 picks, won a Super Bowl with an all-time defense and a bad offense. Like, these are the things that just don't matter to me. There's clearly an argument for Peyton Manning over Aaron Rodgers. That's not it, though, that he won a second Super Bowl when he was one of the worst starting quarterbacks in the NFL, and Aaron Rodgers did not win a second Super Bowl.
I completely agree. And on the Super Bowl point and on winning as a whole for this talk, because we're talking about Rodgers' help, that season, Carson, that really special, was it 2010? It was 2010, right? Or
2010 is the Super Bowl. 2011 is when they went 15-1, though, and they had the all-time offense.
2010 was the only year, one of 2 years in Aaron Rodgers' career, that he had a top 10 defense. They were number 2 in the league that year. He had one other year, he had a top 10 defense, and they went to the conference title game. Aaron Rodgers, because this is, people always talk, oh, the defense. Aaron Rodgers had a top 10 defense twice in 18 seasons. Tom Brady had a top 10 defense 18 of 22 seasons. And routinely, they were not just top 10, they were top 5. And not just routinely were they top 5, they were always top 3. So, again, I just want to reiterate that point when we were talking about quarterbacks, because I think discourse can get really stupid. You got jackasses with CTE, even Steelers legends like Ryan Clark talking about hypothetical losses for quarterbacks before games even happen. And that is what happens when you listen to ESPN and you let them, or whatever NFL network, I don't know who he's on, you let Ryan Clark dumb you down. You don't listen to arguments like that. You use your brain and you realize football's a 53-man sport and there's a lot of moving parts, like players and coaching staffs and schemes. So for our sake, for your sake, please don't make it disingenuous against Aaron Rodgers now that he is retired. And I just hate
Yeah.
when people do that, man. It is my least favorite thing about. I love legacy talk. I love doing the which all-time quarter. It's one of my favorite debates to have with anybody. But when we do winning and Super Bowls and stuff like that, it plucks my nerve, and I think it is the stupidest thing in sports
Mhm.
debates. And that's always what I hear when people want to say something negative about Aaron Rodgers, man. Why didn't he win more Super Bowls? I don't know, man. Do you think Russell Wilson's a better all-time quarterback than Aaron Rodgers because he won one and got to another? It's like,
Mhm.
again, I am just saying this to point out, is Jim Plunkett a better quarterback because he won two
Right.
Super Bowls and Aaron Rodgers didn't? Like, come on, bro. Like, let's use our
Yeah.
heads.
100%. I couldn't agree more. Could not agree more. And by the way, I see some conversations looming if the Rams win the Super Bowl. And I love the Rams, but Matt Stafford's going to have to. And we literally had this conversation in one of our group chats. And I saw somebody come up with the take that is Matt Stafford top 5 all time. As somebody who has been a long time Stafford truther and defender, the notion that him winning a second Super Bowl with the most stacked roster in football would make him a better quarterback than the guy who was in his division, his peer who was better than him for his entire career until Aaron Rodgers at 40 years old tore his Achilles. If that is a conversation that people seriously try to have, as much as I love Stafford, it will be a sign that all hope is lost with quarterback discourse, which, by the way, is already the case because it's the dumbest shit ever. But it's just such a great stat that you bring up about defensive help. And by the way, the same can be said, like not the exact numbers, but for Peyton Manning, who had way more mediocre to bad defenses in his career. For Drew Brees, like Tom Brady is the GOAT to me. But if you think the margin is wide just because he has 7 Super Bowls and those guys have 1 or 2, you have to consider that he also had the greatest run of organizational competence around him and the greatest extended run of team defense in NFL history. And also, he had the greatest longevity ever. And so that's a separator. Like, I think peak to peak, him versus Aaron Rodgers, Peyton Manning, those are real conversations. When you look at the totality of what Brady did, just because he sustained an elite level for longer, like it's got to go to him. But again, even those conversations I think are closer than most people would want you to believe. One last thing about that 2011 team, which I know people are probably like, okay, but they didn't win the Super Bowl. They lost to that Giants team that went on to win the Super Bowl. I get it, but they won 15 games with a shitty run game and a shitty defense. Nobody else has ever done that in the history of the game. That defense, Logan, was 31st in yards per drive allowed and 23rd in points per drive allowed. They won 15 football games, man. Like, it's just a microcosm of Aaron Rodgers at his best and what he could do for a team.
They were 30th against the pass, and they were 26th against the rush.
Dude, like a 2014, just a few years later, okay, they win 12 games, and they're the number one offense with a horrible defense that year, 26th in points per drive allowed, or yards per drive allowed, 18th in points per drive allowed. Like, this is a guy who a full decade apart won MVPs, a full decade apart led number one offenses. He's one of the best to ever do it. And so I just know people are going to try to slander him. First of all, I always say this, and I say this about LeBron now at 41 years old. Like, you can't do anything to worsen my opinion of you when you are playing beyond the reasonable age that anybody could be expected to play at a high level at, okay? Like, for LeBron, everything is gravy. Once you're in the 20th season and beyond, man, you're doing shit nobody else has ever done before. For Aaron Rodgers, yeah, okay, it looked ugly tonight. It's still clearly the second greatest quarterback season by a 42-year-old ever. So there's nothing that can lower my opinion of him at this point. He's just playing beyond expectations, and it was a magical moment last week. I wish it could have ended there. I wish it could have ended with a great touchdown drive against the Ravens, and I said it at the time because I said it's going to feel a lot shittier when he's sitting on his ass and he gets sacked 5 times and shut down by the Texans. Like, we know what he's capable of at this point. We know what he's limited in terms of having lost all his athleticism, but doesn't change what he was at his peak. Doesn't change that I still think this is an impressive season and still the best quarterback play by far the Steelers have had since Big Ben. So if he does want to come back and if he wants to try to end on a higher note, I don't think there's a fairy tale ending to be had.
There's not.
I think at some point you're always running into some version of this. But if he doesn't want to end on a literal pick 6 and 6-point showing, hopefully next year you don't play the Texans defense and you lose first round more respectably, because that's kind of best case scenario for the Steelers as they're currently constructed.
It is. Real quick to tie a bow on that point you're talking about. That is Not even close. That is by far the worst defense in NFL history to win 15 games. Winning 15 games is an incredible feat alone.
Yeah.
One, I want to emphasize this point. They did it, guys, in the 17-week era, in the 16-game season. They didn't do it like the 24 Lions or the 24 Chiefs who did it 17 games. Mind you, both of those defenses were better. The 24 Lions, number 7 defense, number 24 Chiefs, number 4 defense. 07 Pats, number 4 defense. 85 Bears, number 1 defense. 98 Vikings, number 6 defense. 04 Steelers, number 1 defense. 2011 Packers, number 19. That is actually unheard of. They put up 35 points a game that year, man.
It's absolutely insane. And by the way, we can spout numbers at you guys about Aaron Rodgers all day, and we will. Because even if you look at the 2020 and 2021 seasons, this is now old man Aaron Rodgers, who didn't have the same mobility, but was just in such masterful control of the game and so accurate. And like, I'll never forget, he's the best red zone passer we've ever seen. And just his command of like those short yardage situations, absolutely unbelievable. The drives that he was just able to string together, methodical in those seasons. Those years, the Packers win 13 games. They're the number 1 offense in 2020. They're the number 17 scoring defense on a per drive basis. 2021, they win 13 games again. They're a top 5 offense. They are the number 20 scoring defense on a per drive basis. Like, it really is his career. And unfortunately, some guys get unlucky in their NFL careers. And what is wonderful is that Aaron Rodgers got his one. He doesn't have to be Dan Marino and live with those ghosts forever. And so God bless him, man. He's a weird fucking guy. He's a strange fella. He gets fucking furious at his teammates more than any quarterback I've ever seen. Everything that I will say that is glowing about him as a football player, I don't know if I can say about him as a leader and a guy, but he's one of my favorites to ever watch, one of the best to ever do it, and also a Cal Bears legend. And that's got to mean something.
They did not give him enough perks tonight. He was agitated. He
way
was
too agitated, way too tight. Yeah. All right. I think that's enough about the Steelers' misery, Logan. Let's get to these super chats. Ben says Arthur Smith's mustache got to smell like wet fart and boy goo. Yeah. I mean, it's really well said. I mean, Logan clearly agrees with it. He's giggling girlishly over there.
Dude, Arthur Smith, anytime they pan the camera over, I just think of the Lorax, bro. That's who I think of when I see Arthur Smith.
Yeah, it's very valid and very reasonable. Steely, the WRX, says, I just want Drew Brees praise as an arguable top 5. He is certainly on the fringes of that.
Speaking of not his fault, the offense is
exactly
like the offenses Drew Brees was trotting out with the 32nd ranked defense in the National Football League. Bro, once the Saints weren't allowed to kill the opposing team, they couldn't play defense anymore, and they fell off a cliff. Drew Brees is, I think, for my money, maybe the most underrated quarterback of all time, and he is definitely arguable top 5.
2014 to 2016, we will never see a team for 3 straight years like that was that lopsided, where they are churning out top-tier offenses and some of the worst defenses in NFL history. 100% Brees is another one of these guys who was asked to carry so much, did so much, one of the all-time greats. Honestly, he's probably the first outside of my top 5 if we are going post-merger. Because I think if you're going relative to era, Johnny U needs top 5 shouts because he was doing shit in terms of production and carrying offenses that was like way beyond anybody else. But if we just keep it to the relatively modern age, then after that group of Brady, Mahomes, Peyton, Rodgers, Montana, I think Drew is the next guy. I think Steve Young is the next guy after that, because I think Steve Young's peak is very arguably top 5. He just doesn't have the longevity. I'm going with my top 10 quarterbacks. And then I think Marino.
Because I would have Josh Allen above all these guys.
In terms of peak, I agree. Yeah. But Joshua, although he is my GOAT and my savior, he is still only 29 years old. But yeah, I mean, in terms of regular season and playoff peaks,
peak for peak, Drew Brees can go 5. Band for band with anybody.
Anybody except for
like
top
Mahomes and
5.
Josh. Yeah.
Mahomes, Josh, Rodgers, Brady. And Peyton, I'm higher on Peyton.
No, I would say
I think Peyton's regular season resume, again, very arguably is the GOAT.
To me, I would put Rodgers, Mahomes, and Allen in a little bit of a different tier because of the mobility aspect of their games, and I would put Brady, Manning, and Breeze in that next tier together just because they're a little bit, just in terms of play style. I would put them with like Marino in there, like kind of that old school pocket passer. But
For sure, they're totally different
I
types of
agree.
players, but also in the era, I think the pocket passer was really all that there was. So when you judge relative to era, I mean, obviously with a few exceptions, but an overwhelming majority of the elite players were the elite pocket passers. And then these guys came in and started changing the game and changing the quarterback position. The one thing with Breeze, I mean, he wasn't as hyper efficient as like a Peyton. He threw some more picks, although Peyton threw some picks as well. Like Peyton had that trade-off versus Rodgers of being, I would say, a little bit more audacious as a pocket passer. And so probably even hitting on a couple more of those big plays from the pocket than Rodgers did. But what Rodgers did so exceptionally well was never make those mistakes, never turn the ball over, and then also bring you some crazy stuff out of structure outside the pocket. So yeah, peak for peak, I think I would take Rodgers over Peyton. So I think if I had to go in order top 5, Rodgers would probably be my 3, dude. And then Peyton 4, and then Montana 5, and then Breeze 6. And I already have Mahomes 2 because I think he's done enough to be there.
Who was 1?
Tom Brady. I'm talking about like totality. I'm not talking about pure peaks. I'm talking about my top 10 quarterbacks, which is a
totality
career ranking.
Totality, I think Breeze is probably just outside. But you could argue him for sure. I wouldn't push back. Breeze is awesome.
Yeah. And maybe there are going to be some Montana
He's got a
truthers
long
who are
track.
going to say, why isn't he top 3? He's Joe Cool. He's one of the best playoff performers ever. He is one of the best playoff performers ever, 100%.
I'd put Brady than him.
In terms of playoff performance, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Mahomes.
Oh,
Mahomes,
I would
so
go
great.
Brady.
I understand the 2 Super
Brady,
Bowls,
Mahomes,
but it's
and
like the
Joe.
2 Super Bowls are 2 of the toughest circumstances ever. Outside of that, Mahomes' playoff resume is flawless. But Joe Cool, exceptional in the playoffs. I just do not think he did the sort of regular season carry jobs that Peyton and Rodgers did. And even relative to era, like he wasn't putting up the sort of insane efficiency and volume stuff that they were doing. Like Montana was a very good regular season quarterback. Obviously, I have him as a top 5 quarterback of all time, but I do think over the totality of their careers, Rodgers and Peyton were more special. They were more of elevators, but I still have Montana in my top 5. So obviously I think very highly of him. Amadou says, my condolences, Logan. As an ATL fan, I too know the frustration that comes with the terrorism that is an Arthur Smith-led offense. At least this is a clear sign to reset. In the meantime, go Bills. Go Bills, baby.
It's always been go Bills.
Go Bills till the day we die. Appreciate you, Amadou. Jack says, hey guys, love the pod. You have some of the best sports content out there. How did you become fans of your favorite sports teams? I'll take that one. So I'm a Warriors fan because I'm from the Bay Area. That's where I live. I'll give you guys my address in a second. And I'm a Bills fan because my family's Niners fans, but my dad's Canadian. So they weren't like that passionate about it when I was growing up. Meanwhile, my best friend's family from Rochester, his dad, huge Bills fans. So that was much more contagious to me. By osmosis, I like to say I became a Bills fan because the passion was just infectious. I always watched football over at their house. So there's the origin story for me. Logan is a Sacramento Kings fan because he hates himself, and there's no other explanation. And the Steelers?
And then the Steelers, the same passion thing that you're making. I just saw my dad scream at the TV so much during the Steelers. Like one of my first memories ever was the Steelers winning Super Bowl 40, and I saw how happy it made my dad. And then one day I was like, all right, I'm in. I'm game.
Yeah.
And I've been screaming at my television for 20 years straight since.
And now you've stopped screaming and you just stare into the abyss and you just accept the nothingness that overwhelms you for 18 weeks. Yeah, 19 because you got to count wild card weekend.
About 4 years now. Yep.
Yeah, 2020 there was still a little bit of hope there, wasn't it? But really, I mean, we got to go back to 2017. 2017 was the last actually good Steelers team.
But see, when you're in it, you don't know that this is it, man.
That's the crazy thing. That's the crazy thing because some of the fall offs they've had, 2020, of course, they start 11-0. They go 1-6 down the stretch. 2023, they went 4-5 down the stretch. Last year, they went 2-6 down the stretch. Like
it's the Tomlin
even
special,
knowing all
bro.
the flaws they have, and you being at this point one of the most rational Steelers fans. You used to be an irrational Steelers fan, but now you are like painfully rational. Like they still do some stuff to get your hopes up a little bit. They win games early in the season, then it all comes crashing down. Verde 28 says Drake May to you. Drake May taking on that Texans defense now. That's going to be a whole lot of fun, Logan. I think we got a great slate of games coming up, and we're going to preview all of them Wednesday. That show will be up. We're going to go in depth on all 4 of these division matchups that are coming up. Will it be able to live up to the magic of Wild Card Weekend? I don't know. That's a high bar. Those first 4 games we got were really, really special, but we know this is a wild postseason and can't wait to continue that journey with all of you guys. Appreciate you all tuning in. I didn't really think we were going to go close to an hour and a half on the Steelers, but I should have known. And then we had to get in some Aaron Rodgers glaze, a lot of Aaron Rodgers glaze, but it's necessary because if this is it for him, Logan, we are going to be valiantly defending his legacy as so many try to tear him down. Also, Kaylee says Nas Reed. Don't forget the OG.
Nas Reed.
It's true. Nas Reed.
Also, Rudy Gobert for Defensive Player of the Year.
Logan, that's a spoiler for our mid-season also coming up. What? Yeah, lots of good content. You guys know where to find us. YouTube, all of our full episodes, and also our film breakdowns and video essays we do on the NBA. All right here. You can listen to the show across all audio platforms, of course, and you can follow us across social, TikTok and Instagram at NerdSesh, Twitter at nerd_sesh to see clips from the show, graphics from the show, and all of our short form trivia content. So with that, as always, appreciate you guys. Thank you for coming and consoling Logan in his time of need. And Steelers fans, this is a safe space for all of you. And one day, things will change and you guys will actually be really good again, even if you have to get bad before you're good. That's just how it goes sometimes. And if they can accept that, I think there is a light at the end of the tunnel. Although right now they have shown no interest in accepting that. And so there is no light at the end of the tunnel. I'm trying to manufacture one yet. Anyways, on that note, I've been Carson Brabber.
They're going to learn one day, but probably not today.
Nope.
I have been Logan Camden.
And this was Nerd Sesh.